Good evening. Welcome to Mix with a Newb, part 13. Tonight we're going to cover drum editing with dynamic split. And I'm halfway through my challenge. I'm happy to say that tonight was workout number 15 out of 30. I felt really good. I'm starting to be able to push through a lot of the workouts, stuff that would have made me fall flat on week one. Today there's something called a pike to peak, which is kind of like downward dog pose in yoga, where you have your hips and your butt up in the air and you have your hands and feet flat. You're they call it pike because it's like a peak like this. And then you go to plank. So pike to plank. And you just repeat that over and over. And for the finisher, we did 40 seconds of that and then 20 seconds of plank hold. On the plank holds, I collapsed. Or I should say that I held myself up on my feet for just a couple of seconds to try it, and then I'd go to my knees. But I got through those 40 seconds of switching between pike and plank, which was awesome. In fact, this trainer is good because she'll call out when we have like 10 seconds left. Some of the other trainers wait till you're like 5 seconds away, and so it's kind of hard to gauge, how far can you push it. So at the 10-second mark, I was ready to collapse, but I pushed all the way through it. So that feels really good to actually be gaining strength, and I'm trying to hit this point where I'm dropping enough weight that it's easier for me to do a lot of the exercises, so I can up the intensity and my strength. So my strength is climbing and my weight is diving, so like this or something. And there's going to be a meeting point where I've gained such an amount of strength and I've lost enough weight that I can do. There's certain things that I can't even do. Mountain climbers is an example. I can do maybe 4, 5 maybe good mountain climbers, and then I just, the weight of my upper body is just too much. So anyway, that's enough about me. Let's get started on our mix here. What I want to do tonight, because at this stage in the mix, I'm looking for errors. I'm starting to narrow down trouble spots. Now, this is something you can... I feel like I'm talking really loud. Okay, that's probably better. I had this ear a little too covered. You could actually do troubleshooting like this at the beginning of the mix if you want. I find, for me, it's easier if I get into the mix and get it polished and cleaned up and sounding halfway completed before I start giving a critical ear to parts that I need to actually come and change. It's just my process. You could do it however you want. So what I have here is I have this bass section that's real. I'm slapping. I'm dun dun, and then I'm doing this dun dun. I'm trying to follow right along with the guitar. So let's listen to it for a second. I have the click turned on. Turn the bass up here. So when the guitar is strumming that low E, jun jun, I'm slapping the low E. So it sounds okay over the click. It sounds like I'm on. It sounds okay. There's a little variance. There's a little, I'm a little bit off the click in a couple of spots. And the thing is, it probably wasn't bad enough to my ear when I was tracking it. It wasn't bad enough for me to go, oh, that take is bad, let's redo it. I was like, okay, I'm on the click. It sounds okay, but let's turn the kick on here. What I was noticing is, I should just do the kick bus. Listen to the kick and the bass overlapping. I'm going to turn the click off now. It's okay for a little while, and then right about there. Well, it's about the last quarter of that part, or maybe last third. Let's see, it starts maybe right about here. So what you're hearing is the human element of recording music, where we both played over the kick, and if I do solo the kick and the click, he sounds fine. I mean, he's like maybe a little behind it. I mean, he's not 100% on the click, and I wasn't 100% on the click. So what ends up happening is when you mesh those two together, you have maybe half a dozen notes where they're just not landing, and you can actually see it. You can physically see it. Let's do this briefly. I'm going to drag this up below into the bass so it's sitting right below the bass, and then when I'm done, I'll just undo it, and then we're going to hide this automation. All right, so you can actually, if you have the two waveforms here, I'm going to do my best to try to keep the stuff up in this part of the screen, up in the corner, or up in maybe like that corner, because I know my portrait, my face appears down on the screen, you know. So let's see here. There's a perfect example, okay? I have my snap on, so when I click around, I'm actually landing right on the measures, and you can see the click above it. So the click is like right on the measure. It has to be. So there's my hit. Not quite on the measure, but not horribly off. You know, not half a measure off, you know, very, very close. And then you look down here, and here's his kick pattern. And they're just, by this point, they're not lined up. It comes off. So here at the beginning, we're pretty much synced up. I mean, there's places where there's trouble. Okay, this one lines up over that one. Yeah, I mean, it's a little sloppy on both of our parts, the drummer and the bass player. I mean, the thing is, we're both trying to nail it over the kick or the click, and it sounds like what he's doing is putting the notes in between the clicks. So you're hearing click, hit, click, hit, right? And yeah, we can verify that. See? Yeah, I feel like I'm talking really loudly again. All right, let's change our grid. This is the first time I've mentioned grid. This little thing is your grid. You can toggle it on and off. That's off, and there's on. If you right-click on it, here's the settings for it. I have mine set to 1 measure. That's the most common way I use it. We're going to set this down. Let's go down to 1/4 measure. And so what that does is it puts our grid lines. Now I can use, with snap still enabled, I can jump around measures. So you see, like, his kick pattern is pretty close to being almost perfectly metered. I mean, it's not, but again, we're not pros at this yet. We have a long way to go before we're like studio quality. So because we're human and beginners or intermediates or whatever you want to call us, this stuff isn't perfectly metered. My stuff isn't. None of it really is. The guitar playing is, to his credit, the guitar playing is typically very, very close to the click, which is really nice. But then you have us trying to work around it. It's a really hard thing to just play over a click without, you know, some kind of other element in there. So anyway, you can see how everything isn't perfectly lined up. So what we can do, and the thing we need to remember is, if we're going to slice these up, we need to put them back. Let's see here. So okay, so now this is all inside the bass bus, my two kick tracks, and I have to remember, when I'm done, I have to drag them back down into the bass kick bus. All right, so what I've done, if you're going to do this, what I encourage you to do is make a duplicate of your click. Leave a clean one up here, so that, because when I was experimenting with this before I began recording, there was some strange things happening with, once I did the actual process that I'm going to do, parts of this click disappeared. It was really strange. So I undid what I did, and I figured, okay, if I duplicate the click, I'm not going to lose that original click. You want to make sure you keep that original click. If you're ever going to do anything like this with the click, make a copy of it. That way, if anything bad happens to it, you have that original click preserved at the very top there forever. All right, so what you can see is these things are grouped, and you can tell, I can tell because you have this little icon here. Oops. First, let's set our, oh, that's my Gmail dinging in the background. I'm sorry about that. Let me go and mute it. Oh, that's my partner talking to me. Heh. Shout out to my partner sending me a message. It's probably really late on his side. All right. So the way you can tell it's grouped is this green icon right here. Okay, and it's like a little link. It's hard to tell what it actually is. It's hard to actually see the icon. It looks like two little things linked together, I guess. Grouped, yeah. So the way to undo it is just hit U for ungroup, okay? We're going to make our own group now. It looks like this is group 2. I actually think what I did was I grouped it earlier in preparation for this. Okay. Now they're all ungrouped. So what you want to do is you do want to group them. So you click on the first object, hold down Shift, and click on each one below it. You can also do, let's undo that. You can click on the first item, and we're using this duplicate click. We'll retitle it duplicate kick. Okay, click. I keep saying kick and click interchangeably. They're not. All right. So you click on the first thing, and then you can actually hold down Shift and do like your lasso like this. And be careful because we got this part of the base over here. To unselect that, hold down Control and click on it. All right. So now I'm going to hit G. So everything's grouped. Now what you want to do, whichever item is the most metered, the closest to being perfectly synced up as far as tempo goes, tempo and time signature, you want to use that as your base item. So our click track obviously is perfectly metered. It's robotically metered. So we're going to right click on it and we're going to go to item processing, and that's where our dynamic split lives, okay? So you could also hit D, I guess. Let's see here. Can you just hit D? You just hit D and it pops right up. All right, so here's our pop-up dialog box for dynamic splits. We have different choices here. At transient, when gate opens, and when gate closes. And you can experiment with these and find out what you get. And what I would encourage you to start out with is look at the click and see, because this is going to be, if you're looking at a waveform like a bass line or a kick track, it's going to vary when you turn these things on and off. It's going to be a little rough to read it, but if you look at these pure clicks, you get a better idea of what it's actually going to be doing. It's going to set these marker lines here. And then when we're actually done, we have this drop down here. So we can tell it to split the selected items, split selected and grouped items, write stretch markers to selected items, write stretch markers to selected items, and add to grouped items, which is the one we're going to want. And then we can do add transient guide markers to items. So all these choices are good. And later, if we actually have to slice this for any reason, we can use the same tool to actually put slices, splits. Again, I use those two sort of interchangeably, but they're not. To add splits to the grouped items, we can actually do that. So now what we want to do is we want to set transient sensitivity, this one down here at the bottom. And you do have these options up here, reduce splits. So this is kind of like almost like a sensitivity button. I mean, you can just manually tell it how many splits to have. Minimum slice length. So this also, these are sort of like, and then minimum silence length. These are also kind of sensitivity. These you could almost think of as like your gate settings. You know, you can tell it to have a minimum slice of 82 milliseconds. This is good if you have stuff that's supposed to be metered out just perfectly, and it's not. And then we have constrain slice length, left to right or best to worst. We're going to leave it on best to worst. Now here's our gate. And now if you have these both unchecked, you notice this grays out. So it's only when you're telling it to use the gate that you can change the threshold. Now, when we click on this set transient sensitivity, there's a setting here, display threshold. And I did have it turned on, and that's why you see this horizontal line here. So the little vertical checked lines are the ones that are going to be applied once we're finished tweaking our settings. And this horizontal line is the sensitivity, this threshold. Okay. And it actually, because you have to be patient with this, because each time you make a change to it, it actually has to go through every item and put those changes in there. So you just be patient. So I'm just going to set this at transients. And what I want is I want stretch markers. I don't want to actually split the items at this point, because I believe the stretch items, it's going to be, this stuff's going to be close enough that we can just come in manually and stretch it by hand, which will be good. So now we do want to look at our transient sensitivity. And what you want to pay attention to here is, if I change the transient sensitivity, I want to make sure it's going to hit on each click. So we have our sensitivity all the way up, but then we change our threshold. It looks like we might have to come down. No, this one looks, let's see here. All right, so you can't move around. I want to move my cursor off of that. Oh, it's because I have, did you see that? I moved that item up there. I moved that guitar part inadvertently. Okay, so I wanted to move my cursor off of that exact spike just to be able to view it. So I'm going to hit D again. It brings it right up. All right, so it lays those. These are previews of what it's actually going to do. We're not going to have it when gate closes. We're going to set the trend. Okay, so threshold. See how when I move this, it narrows and widens that threshold. So if you raise the threshold above the peak of these small guys, it won't get them. Once it's touching the peak, see how it gets them. Now it's telling you, okay, we're going to add one here. And I think it looks like, yeah, I can't move the, oh, I can. I guess I can't, okay. For some reason I couldn't click. Oh, it's because it's a full measure again. The grid is one full measure, so I can't just click randomly here in the middle. Actually, let's change this back to 1/4 because that's been, I've tried 4 or 5 times to click right on one of these other, because I just want to make sure when I have it, when you have the play cursor over, it actually hides the little preview slice line perfectly. So it looked like this one was going to be missed, but it's not. All right, so that's pretty much exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and do right stretch markers. And now you can see these little these little diamond heads, okay? These will let you stretch. The thing is, if you have it set to grid, it's not going to be very forgiving at all. It's only going to go like exactly where it'll snap to. So like I just changed that to 1/128th. So it's like 128 divisions per measure. Let's go up to something a little less intense. Okay, there's 1/8. So you want to try to change this grid, and you don't have to use snap. You can actually just do these manually, which we may check out. So all right, so yeah, I wanted to select on this because I was having a hard time getting a good feel for where these need to be. Oops. Okay, so you want to, I believe at this point we probably want to ungroup these. Yeah. All right, so what had happened there, I'll go back. When I stretch this one, it moves all of the grouped. Okay, it's not doing it now. Nope. Okay, now they're grouped, I believe. There we go. Okay, now they're grouped, and the group. Not only does it have the icon up here above it, but you can see a faint green line around the bottom of each group, of each item in the group. It's kind of hard to see based on what you have selected. And I think stuff like this is why people do move off the default skin for Reaper. You can put a skin on top of Reaper and make everything look. You can get like a Pro Tools skin if you want it to look just like Pro Tools. You can get it all kinds of really cool skins. Anyway, this is telling me that it's grouped, so if I move one of these items, it moves all the grouped items with it, and you don't want to do that. So we're going to ungroup this stuff. And I thought if I select off of it or on it, yeah, I guess neither is like exactly easier to read. So we're going to move this hit over. We want it over that click, and if we look, now it's more or less in between those two hits. At least it's probably better than, yeah, well, it's going to be a toss-up, but let's move it to the click. So let's just go quickly by hand here and do our best to move these by hand. Now the thing is, this gets tricky because now it's kind of hard to see where, yeah, it's hard to see where everything is. I wonder if I just change the color to this set. Let's see where is it? Custom color, item settings. Where is my custom color here? Item properties. I wonder if I'll just change the track color. Default. I'm just trying to make this stuff more visible, visibly more easy to see. I can turn the grid off. Yeah, it helps a lot to have the grid off, but then this stuff is just free flowing. So let's see here. Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly kind of line this stuff up like in a rough fashion. Let's see. Just to kind of get them over the little click hash marks up here. And just freehand, just real rough, and then we'll play it and see if it sounds good, if it sounds terrible. It's probably not going to sound that much different than it does now, I imagine. I mean, there might be a couple of rough spots. I predict there will be a couple of little weird rough spots, but it won't sound that awful. Let's see here. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be dead wrong and it'll sound like garbage. All right, so let's see if we can move this one by itself. Oh, no. Maybe it's this. Where's that blue one? No. All right, so we've changed. You can see here where we've changed because they start to split apart. Over here where they're gray, we have not affected any of this. So let's just listen to this first little part. Make sure you have that soloed and the click. There was one little rough spot. Right there, maybe, I think. This one, perhaps. All right, I'm turning my snap off because that helps you just move it much smoother. All right, compare. Yeah, it's not. For one thing, it's hard to even hear the kick. It's super hard to hear the kick because when I moved it out of the kick bus, now it's not getting like its compression and stuff like that. So just boost the signal on these and see if that helps. You don't want to drive them like this, but let's undo that click here. Add guitar. Actually, let's just hear the whole mix. Let's see. Oh, what else do I have soloed? Oh, probably the kick bus. Get rid of that click. It sounds a little bit better. It's still pretty rough. I guess the thing to do, well, my gut is telling me now, is instead of trying to line up perfectly to the click, it's probably better to line up to the kick. Kick, click, kick. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to remove all of these stretch markers at once. Let's see. Remove items? No. That would remove the whole thing. All right. Oh, yeah, and again, I'm supposed to be trying to have this up in the left corner of the screen if possible. So I think you can just click on these and hit delete. Let's see. No, that deletes the whole thing. I thought, or is it you have to hold Alt or something like that? Yeah, if you hold down Alt, it'll just remove these. So let's get rid of them in the first. And I don't know for sure if there's a way. There might be a way. Item processing. Let's see here. Move. Import new. Normalize. Yeah. Stretch markers. Here we go. Let's see. Stretch markers and select. Here we go. Remove. Boom. There is a quick way to do that. So that was right click, stretch markers in selected items, and then you can either do snap to grid or remove. Oh, let's try that snap to grid. I've tried this before, and this is spotty. This is the thing you have to do with this is you really need to make sure your grid is set correctly. Like, you probably don't want to use the T for triplet. You probably don't want to do that. Let's see here. All right, so let's try this again. The problem with doing this with the kick is then it's not gonna fit with the rest of the drums. So, God, where was it? Stretch markers. Here it is. Stretch markers and selected items. Snap to grid. It almost sounds like maybe this whole clip is just slightly behind or ahead of the kick. So I'm going to line this very first strike up over this kick and just see if that could be it. It's possible that was the issue. Let's see if did any of these actually move? If these moved when I did that align to grid, these numbers would have changed. This is showing you how far, see? That's showing you how far from the original position it's been moved. This one's been moved by a factor of 1.08, and this one over here shows 0.93. So it looks like when I did that dynamic split, or I did the align to grid, it did not actually move anything. So let's try, this is just kind of like experimenting, and the thing that I've read, I'm going to attribute it one more time to Mixerman series of books, The Zen and the Art of Mixing, Zen and the Art of Recording. Really great author, easy stuff to read, full of good tips. He says you should be experimenting 10% of the time. So I do try to experiment and see how this stuff, how I can come up with my own way of doing this stuff that I didn't copy, note for note or line for line from a different producer. Okay, so I changed the grid to 1/8? To 1/8, and then I did snap and they didn't move. So let's try a quarter, okay, so this might, it's almost like they're not really stretch markers and selected items, snap to grid. Yeah, see, they're not moving at all. So that means maybe that they are snap to grid because, okay, so this is a good noob moment right here. I'm experimenting, but I'm not thinking of this through because these stretch markers, where did they come from? Well, they came from the click, right? They came from the click track. And the click track is perfectly at 1/4 measure. So those aren't gonna move at all because they're already on the grid. So anyway, let's hear that with guitar because I think maybe moving it. No, now it sounds even messier. Okay, so let's, yeah, that wasn't the answer. Let's move this back. I wish I had kept its position mark or something. Let's turn that kick off for now. All right, so I think this is pretty close. The problem is I'm trying to pack in too many bass notes in there. I'm really just trying to slap, and then pull off these little do like a 4-note run, like a little 8th note flourish, which he's doing on the guitar, but he's picking. It sounds lined up to me, to the guitar at least. This one's really a challenge for me because these things, by themselves, they sound fine, but then you add this kick in there and it just becomes like a flubbing mess. So let me see if there's just a couple of places maybe I can make this sound cleaner here. Where I'm going to want to put the... If I can move these... Where the major notes are, if I can major as far as the louder of the slaps. It's probably the slap notes mostly. If I can place them right directly between... Yeah, it's not that bad. It's like I feel like there's only a couple of places left where it's still not quite on. But I also feel like those two notes should correspond. But then when I matched this up, it like no longer worked with the guitar. Yeah, so I think this hit on the bass is supposed to be like a little pre-note. Ba-da-na, ba-da-na. You know what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go look at a different section that I haven't moved and just try to get a feel for where the first slap sits with the kick. Okay, so the kick actually leads it. That's not it. That's not the same spot at all. All right, where is it? Where are you? Where do you live? Your guitar, bass. It's going to be right here, I think. Oh, what that hissing is. I think that's because I have the kick inside the bass bus and it's getting some of the effects. Something's going on there. No, that's not it. Is this the first place we have that? It can't be right. There it is. Okay, see, this one looks... We got to go enable our other kicks down here, which are on 2. Outside 1, 2. All right, see, that one is better. That one, I don't hear such jarring mistakes. So I'm actually we're going to do some replacement here. This is something, I'm okay doing this because the bass parts are identical. And for time and to make it sound as clean and tight as possible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy this section of it and I'm going to bring that over and replace the bass part because the bass part seems so mangled that it's not going to really work to try the dynamic split. And so we're going to do right click, copy selected area of items. I'm going to come over here to where this is. And now we should be able to get a feel for if we try this and it doesn't line up over the kick, then we know that there might be some issues in the kick, right? So what I'm actually going to do is use my click and my guitar to try to line this up just right. So, right there. But if we remember, I think the kick actually leads it a little bit. Yeah, I think this needs to be just a back a little bit. Okay. Let's get in here and look at some of these, where these are hitting, because it's not, that didn't work. That wasn't just like a quick, perfect fix like I thought it might be, so let's maybe move this just a little bit here. Okay, so this is me like really noobing around, and I'm okay with this. I have to be okay with this because I can't go back through and record that bass again. My living situation just doesn't allow for it. Oops, why did I unsolo the bass? So where is this? Alright, so that's like the beginning of the phrase again, pretty much right here. So I think this should be like this. Yeah, I think that's pretty good as far as being lined up to the guitar. Yeah. That's about as good as I think it's going to get. This could be... At this point, I'm going to use the nudge because we're talking... Oops, 7 milliseconds? Okay, that might be good enough. All right, so I'm going to put the kick back. I think now, because I'm happy with the way that bass section sounds, we have to make sure you put this back in the kick bus where it came from. All right, now let's hear it. No, not these. Turn the whole drum bus on. Because you got to remember that snare lives in there too. Or I should say, I got to remember. It's still pretty rough. All right, so we did try to take advantage of the dynamic split. It didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, so I just replaced a part of the song with another part of the song, which was more precise. And the thing is, what might be troubling here is, what might be actually making the ear, it sound kind of rough to the ear, is some of these bass hits might benefit from a little bit of manipulation too. Let me see here. I'm wondering if... Okay, here's another thing I got from Mixerman, and I feel kind of stupid just like continuously throwing him out as a reference, but he is a source that I relied on. So I feel like it's okay to be influenced heavily by one person's work or books or philosophy, because that's typically what does happen with music too. Is we can point to, if you saw in the last video, there's typically a couple of artists, a handful, that you point to as being like directly influential on you. You know, you're probably influenced by dozens of artists to a lesser degree. Hold on, excuse me. I had to sneeze there. I haven't sneezed on camera yet. So Mixerman, and again, I do apologize for repeatedly plugging him, but I got great enjoyment out of his book, and I got lots of different tips from him. And he actually talks about mixing, what's the term he uses? He says to, he says that you can actually, if a part is not adding something to the song, you can actually get rid of it or mute it, leave it out. The term will come to me. I'm struggling to think of how he phrases it. So what I'm thinking is I can use automation and actually just have these muted over this part, because that kick is just, there's something not lining up right, but I think the snare sounds okay. And it actually might give it a cool effect when the kick does kick back in. It's going to make this verse part hit harder. Just like that. So that might be what I do. Of course, based on, I'd have to run it by, I'd have to do a print of it and run it by the band and see like, hey, these kicks are kind of messy right here, and it sounds a lot better if I just underdub. That's it. Underdub. Thank you, memory. The term you commonly hear is overdub, which means take one part and like lay it over, like overdub. Replace over something with something else, which a lot of people think of, if you're going to fix it, overdub it. But you can actually underdub in this case, like just remove that part. So what I'm going to do here, this is kind of an interesting thing, how I started on one topic, but we kind of led to this other topic. It's good in a way. To me, it's good. Is that food in my beard? Lovely. All right, so we're going to do item settings here, and there's a mute. We're just going to mute these things in the mix. Okay, and we can actually do that. Let's find out. Let's find here. Let's see. We can do that here too. Now the thing is, when we do our rip, when we do a MP3, you might actually get some kick coming through in those parts from the ambient bus, for example. Let's hear. Barely. Let's hear the snare bus. Maybe there'll be some in there. I think because we have the gate on there, there isn't much. Let's bypass it. And even the stuff that's coming through isn't that punchy, so it's not... Essentially, you're going to be muting the kick right here. And I think this will work out because it, like I said, it'll have contrast. When that kick comes back, it'll just make the mix pound. It'll make it hard, hit hard. Let's see here. Is there one more part of this? Yeah, there is. This part actually sounds like it's... That part might actually be okay, and I'll be tempted to leave that in there, because if it is lined up just right... Now here's another thing we could do, following the example of what I did earlier, is I could actually take these and insert them... Let's try that. Again, we're experimenting because, according to some mixers, maybe I don't have to say his name every single time. Mixerman, oh my god, he's the best. I'm sure you get sick of hearing that, but his stuff is very good. We can duplicate this, and let's try to lay it over the top of that other part we muted. Just kind of like what we did with the bass line, just for kicks. Let's do it. So to easily duplicate something, just I have them both selected. Hold down Control, and you see the cursor turns into the little plus. So we're just going to drag this. We'll actually just lay it right over the top of this and see if that does the trick. Actually, I think that crossfade might be... Okay, there we go. Yeah, and those are off because we didn't quite line this up. See how if you don't line it up just right, you get that kind of... like they were not where they're supposed to be at all. Let's see, this should do it. See, it just sounds messy. Obviously, this is a different part of the song that I'm just kind of trying to just toss in there, so it makes sense that it doesn't work instantly. Now, if we tried to line up some of these, let's see here. Yeah, let's try to line some of these up and just see if it just like magically works. I do this a lot, and sometimes you have like happy accidents, and it's like, oh, it works just fine. No, it doesn't work because, and the thing is, oops, how did that happen? All right, I'm going to Control Z out. Again, Control Z undoes, it's the undo button. So, let me go back over here. This is really interesting. This part sounds like he's doing something. Sounds like he's doing something like tricksy with the, like real tricky with the. I wonder if that's just the gate. Yeah, that's just the gate. It almost sounded like he was doing like a variation of the beat right there, but that's not what it was. The gate threshold was preventing some of those softer snare hits from coming through. So again, we're gonna just mute the. Oops, don't loop. Loop item source. No, we're gonna mute this. Selectively mute it. There it goes. The snare is still doing that. Hear that? Where it's intermittent. If we look at the threshold on our gate here, some of those hits just fall right below it, just barely below the threshold. So we'll bring it down just a tiny bit. I think that sounds actually pretty good as far as giving variety to the parts. You just drop the kick out completely. So maybe that was a happy accident, which is going to happen. It is. Okay, that little bass snip is too loud. It's drowning. Oh, why is my bass so low? Huh, interesting. I'm going to delete this duplicate kick or click because I don't need it anymore. So thank you for watching. That was happy accidents while mixing. We did talk about, I showed you the dynamic split. Just a quick, brief covering of it. It's a very complex thing to use, as you saw with all those different drop-down options and gate open, gate close. I would encourage you to experiment with it until you get a lot more comfortable. There's a lot of cool things you can do. You can actually split some items and then come back and add markers, and you can do a lot of different good stuff. And then our happy accident was I discovered that part might not actually be salvageable as far as shifting the bass. The thing I will say is if I come in and spend an hour or 2 hours tweaking those bass notes and just moving them just a little bit here and maybe moving a little bit of the kick notes, I could maybe get it to sound 50% better. I'm not going to. It's not worth. It's the return that I get from it, from all those hours of tweaking it, is not worth it, because to your ear it's going to sound like, ooh, there's something off here. So instead, I'm going to underdub and just mute the kick part there, which lets the guitar and bass kind of stand out. It's like you're hearing just snare. And then when the verse kicks back in, boom, there's the kick again, and it has like a punch to it. So again, happy accident that we discovered that. And like I said, it's not necessarily that I'm lazy and I don't want to actually manipulate those notes. It's just from experience. I've done it before. on different songs, and what I know is you get into this refinement where it starts to sound cleaner, but then it starts to sound a little unnatural. So you go back and try to give it a little bit more of a natural feel, and then it loses its precision, and then it's just this back and forth, and it's a time sink, and it just ends up eating up all your time, and then at the very end, you're never really fully happy with it because your ear goes, oh, this part is like, there's something weird in here where the beat is like manipulated, or it doesn't sound natural. So in this case, we're going to just not delete, but selectively mute the kick part for that part of the song. Let the guitar and bass shine through, and then the punch of the kick when it returns is now an element of the song. So thank you for watching episode 13 of Mix with a Newb. I'm Isaac, I'm the Newb. Appreciate your viewership. Please hit subscribe on our channel. Hit like if you like the video. Send it to some of your friends that are into making music. And I'll see you in the next episode.